70 years ago, a new dawn in Britain saw the creation of the NHS, social security, free education, council housing, and a commitment to providing access to justice for all people through the legal aid system. At the same time, a small group of London lawyers established the London Criminal Courts Solicitors Association, which has upheld standards in court and supported the ever-changing working lives of London's criminal lawyers ever since. So in 70 years, what has the LCCSA ever done for us?
Criminal legal aid lawyers in London are, I think, probably the most diverse professional group in the country, and the LCCSA committee reflects that. And we provide a great range of services to them.
It's a place, a forum to exchange information, to exchange details of case law and practices that we've found useful.
We provide access to justice campaigns so that we battle in relation to the endless cuts to legal aid.
What we want is an unequivocal commitment to overturn any legal aid cuts. Will he give it? Let's find out. Sadiq Khan.
It's a place to find trusted solicitors to carry out agency work at the courts and the police station, solicitors who won't take your clients, who will do a good job.
And we do a terrific job in relation to law reform, so we comment continuously on law reform proposals and sentencing proposals.
Client choice is the greatest.
Above all, it's provided somewhere to meet a range of people, colleagues who you otherwise might not have met, and you can learn from, share with. It's a support group, legally, emotionally sometimes.
You know that there is a common aim between you, which is about providing justice for all.
I came into the profession in the early 1990s, and my inspiration were definitely all the lawyers who were involved in overturning the wrongful convictions of the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6.
Out of jail, cleared of the bombing after 15 years. 3 policemen are suspended. A judge says officers lied.
Miscarriages of justice have been at the heart of the publicity, really, about what's gone wrong in the criminal justice system. But a lot goes right, because solicitors are really at the heart of preventing things from going wrong.
When you prepare the case properly, present an active defence, you can prevent miscarriages of justice.
About 10 years ago, I represented a man who'd been arrested for murder. His DNA in blood was on the trigger of the murder weapon, and he wasn't able to give me any explanation at all for what appeared on the face of it to be overwhelming evidence, and really he was looking at a murder conviction. Eventually he explained what had happened, that he had been encouraged by others to participate. He'd refused to take part, there'd been a struggle, he'd picked up a knife. In the course of that struggle he'd cut his finger, and after the shooting they had prevailed on him to take the murder weapon to a third party so it could be destroyed, and that was how his blood was on the gun. So having won his trust, we were able then to run a defence that the jury believed, because it turned out that it was completely in accordance with all the forensic evidence, the blood distribution evidence, and as a result, a man who could have been serving a life sentence for murder walked free.
But over the past 30 years or so, successive governments have overseen incremental shifts in the system towards the interests of the state and against the accused.
It's difficult to decide which is the most egregious change that has impacted on the opportunities for people in terms of access to justice.
The police have had an agenda for the last 40, 50 years to try and restructure the rules in their own favour and in favour of the prosecution. That's eroded the right to silence. It's allowed the introduction of bad character and hearsay evidence, which formerly would not have been admitted.
The thing for me, most of all, would be the credit for an early guilty plea, which fundamentally comes down to pressure to plead. They've even named a hearing after it.
Well, making it easier to convict the guilty also makes it much easier to convict the innocent.
Crime lawyers have their work cut out, not just in seeking to prevent miscarriages of justice, but also fighting against more and more obstacles being put in their way.
You don't leave any stone unturned. You don't accept anything a police officer or a CPS lawyer says, and a lot of things end up not going anywhere, but you find that extra thing, right? Because you don't just accept, which makes for amazing training but is really difficult to reconcile with the criminal justice world that I'm growing up in.
The trial management process, whilst it can be a good thing because it's good to try and speed up the process and allow everyone to know what the issues in the case are, it can become the overriding objective. So at times we're in a criminal justice process, not a criminal justice system.
You can't be there when a charging decision is made because we're on a fixed fee and it's often 5, 6, 7 hours after the interview, right? So my boss is not going to let me sit there for 6 hours without getting paid, which I think is fair enough. So you have to basically beg custody or the officer in the case to call you when they make a decision about bail. 9 times out of 10 they don't call you.
I spend a great deal of my time writing to the Crown Prosecution Service, alerting the court to the fact that I don't have any of the materials. My client's accused of something very serious or even something very minor. I have to go back to court and say, can I have the CCTV? Can I have the witness statements?
And when I make a fuss, I'm made to feel like I'm an inconvenience.
If you want to ring the court, you could spend 4 or 5 hours before anyone answers the phone. Literally nobody answers the phone. And I don't criticise the court staff for that. It's because they're under-resourced. But in terms of moving a case on, it's very difficult. Everyone's been hit by resources. The CPS struggle, the defence are struggling. There's been huge cuts to the court service.
The morale of the legal aid criminal profession is low. We feel under attack by the government.
Most solicitors are devoted to their job, devoted to their work. They're not in it for the money, but they do need to be reasonably remunerated to do the job.
Fees are not based on how long you do a job. If you go to the police station, the solicitor's firm gets a fixed fee. For most cases in the Magistrates' Court and Crown Court, you are effectively working to a predetermined fee, which unfortunately is a disincentive to do many hours work, but the committed solicitor will, and they'll do what's necessary, but they do it at a loss.
That places them in great conflict. They want to do a proper job, or they'd rather not do a job at all, but it makes it much harder.
There have been some recent improvements to the criminal system, but these are largely technological. Meanwhile, the funding cuts to both prosecution and defence and increasing pressure to speed up the process has brought the criminal justice system to its knees, and it now relies on the devotion and goodwill of solicitors to keep it running.
The courts are far less busy. They're like ghost towns. Everyone has been hit by cuts. Even the court buildings, the structure is kind of just eroding away.
The courts have fallen apart, literally fallen apart. So when you go to Thames Magistrates' Court, Court 7 I think, half of the seats have got that tape round them because you can't sit in them. They've taken the water coolers away. People who are at court with sometimes their children, their families, who have to wait for them, they can't even get a glass of water at court.
But not all of the obstacles being placed in defence lawyers' way can be excused by the police's lack of resources.
The arguments for remanding a suspect are often impossible to argue with. For example, if they're a young black man, they're going to tell you they're on the gang matrix. Often, right? If it's anything to do with drugs or knives, they just use the word gang matrix and the person just doesn't get bail. The gang matrix is essentially police intelligence. So I can't say they're not on the gang matrix.
In the current climate of massive numbers of sex and historic sex cases being investigated, there's a lot of concern about how celebrities are dealt with, or not just celebrities, but anyone whose name is publicised. The benefits are clear. Somebody else might come forward with compelling evidence, and that's why the police want to publicise these things.
With this sort of thing, these particularly sexual offences, the impact that has is that it prejudges the case in the minds of a potential jury.
Anyone, in theory, could have their name bandied around the papers. Their reputation can be completely trashed and destroyed when there really may be little evidence, if any, against them.
The police behaviour in this way does affect, it has a corrosive effect on our justice system, and it ought not to happen.
And as well as abuses of the system, lawyers are constantly up against prejudices still inherent within the system.
You're still 8 times more likely to be stopped and searched if you're from a black or ethnic minority group, so there certainly is still bias.
Also against defendants who are not from the same class as the judiciary, and that by far is one of the big issues now.
The quest to rise above all these challenges remains the heartbeat of the profession. And in these difficult times, the Association continues to provide a crucial role in reminding criminal lawyers just why they're in the job.
No 2 days are the same. You never know what's going to come in.
It's a really exciting job. I've done it for nearly 30 years and you meet so many different people with so many different backgrounds, with so many different issues.
Each new case is a new story. Each one almost could be a drama in its own right, but you're at the heart of it.
We're all proud when we win. We're all proud when we think we've made a difference to someone's life.
The thing I love the most, I think, about the job is actually the clients, the people I represent. I go to work every day and feel hugely privileged to be let into their lives.
They come to rely on you and you get to fight for them. And that's interesting, it's fascinating, and it keeps you going.
But the role of the criminal solicitor has widened in recent years, in ways not always recognised or remunerated by the Ministry of Justice.
As a trainee solicitor, my job involves going in and out of police stations all the time. Once a week, I'll be on duty when the office closes till 9 a.m. the next morning. So if anyone gets arrested over that time, I've got the phone next to my bed, I have to answer it, I have to go to the police station. So I'm often in sort of Romford at 2 in the morning.
Sometimes the public may not understand the extent to which a defence lawyer has to act, sometimes and often for free.
You've left a police station and you have a young client who has no way of getting home and no money to do so, and you find yourself driving them halfway across London at 3 in the morning, and I doubt if there's a criminal solicitor in London who hasn't done that.
The client's family tend to have your mobile number, and these are anxious relatives, and anyone in that position would do the same. So you are generally at their beck and call any time of the day and night if they've got a question or anxiety about what is happening.
And that's not accounted for in terms of how you get paid. You get paid a fixed fee.
Criminal solicitors often become involved with people when their lives are at a time of crisis. Could be because of acute poverty, it could be because they're experiencing mental health problems.
And that can be incredibly difficult, for me at least. I find it really hard to reconcile my role with a solicitor, which is to advise someone on their legal rights, and really to think, so my solicitor head is, how strong is the police evidence? Does this person want to consider admitting to this offence? Should they wait to see what evidence the police have? With their perhaps quite serious mental health problems, you leave the police station having done your solicitor job, but this person with serious mental health problems has gone back to this horrible cell. And so I'm there at night thinking, should I call them? Is it worse if I call them because I have to make them come out to custody to speak to me again when actually they just want to sleep? Are they feeling really lonely and they just want me to chat to them? Is it appropriate that I'm even considering that I would be a source of solace for them? I find it really, really emotionally exhausting.
And I think for me, one of the huge benefits of the London Criminal Courts Solicitors Association is that it brings together lots of solicitors who can share that type of experience.
And that's a network of support which is invaluable for many lawyers.
But this is just one of the many sides to the criminal law profession that is misunderstood by the public at large. And that misunderstanding is arguably the root cause of many of the challenges that the LCCSA and its members face today.
The fat cat lawyer image is always going to be something that's put forward by the likes of the Daily Mail, and we just have to keep plugging home the message that we do good work representing people and we don't get huge amounts of money. In fact, we get far less even than people did 10, 20 years ago.
Solicitors' fees for criminal work were consistently cut, or at best frozen, even in the boom years of the 90s and early 2000s, as successive governments realised that legal aid is one of the few spending cuts which is roughly vote neutral, with as many people supporting cuts as opposing them, unlike most other areas of public spending where cuts are fiercely opposed.
It's difficult when people see crime as a problem and it's whipped up as there's so much crime around. We are often seen as the people who get people off.
People often ask at a dinner party, how can you represent someone who you know is guilty? It's a very straightforward answer. Firstly, I never know he's guilty.
I usually start with the obvious, which is that if a client tells you they're guilty but says, but let's make up this really clever story, then I have to say, I'm sorry, I can't represent you, right? That's the first answer. But what they really mean is, when they say you know they're guilty, you've got that inkling, haven't you? They seem a bit creepy, don't they? You just know.
We want a criminal justice system that determines guilt, not my feelings.
My job is to act on their instructions, however plausible or otherwise they may be, because unless I do that, there won't be a fair trial and we'll have a criminal justice system that convicts innocent people.
Campaigns about legal aid cuts are not popular often with the public. And the reason for that is it is not a service that they tend to use regularly or actually ever think that they're going to need.
We are the criminal bar, possibly the second oldest profession.
Yeah.
We are certainly the most restrained in Britain.
What's all this about?
Lawyer protests. They're cutting legal aid in criminal cases.
Well, better than the NHS.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, shouldn't affect you if you behave yourself.
There is a misapprehension that because there are career criminals and people who get in trouble all the time, that's what all of our clients are. And of course, people who have been in trouble more than once make up a big proportion of those going through the system. But the reality is that our clients are literally everyone.
I think that there's not one person out there in the public that doesn't risk being arrested at some time, whether or not they've done something.
So then Billy, Billy, he was all over him. I literally had to prize them apart.
And he's about a yard taller than Alfie, isn't he?
Exactly.
Oh, his parents need to get a grip.
So then I pull them apart, but then Billy falls over and starts crying. Suddenly I'm left feeling like the Asbo mum.
We represent accountants and nurses and teachers, everybody you can think of, people's children who have got into trouble with drugs at university or who are accused of overstepping the mark in a sexual situation.
Just being in the wrong place at the wrong time can get you caught up in lots of different situations.
And it often is anyone and can be anyone, and there are there but for the grace of God go I.
I've acted for numerous cases where clients come to you and they're shocked at the position that they're in, and it was a momentary lapse. It might have been a driving offence, sometimes with serious consequences.
This is ridiculous.
It does seem trivial, but they are taking this seriously.
And if I plead guilty, what's the sentence?
You won't go to prison, but it will show up on your CRB check. And social services may want to speak to you about Alfie. Ultimately, it is an assault on a child.
I represented a university student, really nice guy. When he was 15, he'd bought a taser which looked like a mobile phone. A taser counts as a firearm, and so this kid was suddenly looking at 5 years in prison.
To help increase the public's understanding of all this, which will in turn increase pressure on politicians to think again about the erosion of our criminal justice system, is probably the biggest challenge on the LCCSA's hands.
The government seem to have no great vision for how they would like legal aid to be in the future. And part of our purpose is to try and give them that vision.
It'll continue with the work it does in law reform, in responding to consultations and in ensuring that legal aid remains in place so that we can continue to represent our clients to the best of our ability.
The issues facing an organisation such as the LCCSA are obviously the campaigns against continued legal aid cuts, but also about entry to the profession. About keeping the door open to people like me. No one in my family had ever been a lawyer before.
The association works to ensure that its members' work, at the heart of the justice system, continues to be valued.
The fact that the association has lasted for 70 years, I think, is a reflection of the fact that it's also been adaptable. It has changed to reflect the interests of that very diverse membership and a growing membership.
I'm hoping that the association and the wider profession will be here in another 70 years, another 100 years, another 170 years, because we're good and we provide an essential service to the wider society.
I hope that the future of the association is as bright as its past has been.